September the 23rd, 2020. Guys, I mentioned doing this video, and a lot of you asked me about it. And it was a video that was taken down a few years back with the old channel. All the videos were just taken down. But it never hurts to come back and redo it, because as you see, things change over the years, like we have in the last 2 or 3, 4 years on this planet, guys. You always get a kind of a fresher look, because you're seeing some of these events come to pass, and it really starts to open your eyes. So I don't really mind doing it. Now, there's a site called sacredtext.com, or in sacred-text.com, and they have books from different genres here that are ancient texts that were really not published that much. And again, this particular one is called The Forgotten Books of Eden. Now, you can come here and read it free, and I suggest you get a copy of it, because in a bug out situation, you may not have electricity or your computer or whatever, but you can go ahead and read it here. But notice it says buy this book at Amazon.com. And more than likely, they get a small percentage of it if you do it. I'm going to go there just to show you what the book looks like. I've had the paperback, which is a big, thick book, probably 700 or 800 pages. And I've had it over 30 years, and it's getting a little worn. And so they've got the hardback copy of this one, and not only the Forgotten Books of Eden, but many of the lost books of the Bible. And a hard bound copy. I have nothing to do, no money to make off the deal or anything like that. I just want to show you this. If you click buy this book at Amazon, again, put it in your backpack if you got a bug out, because it has some amazing information. Now, this is what it looks like, and this is the hardbound copy. Paperback is about $11.99, which is a lot better than nothing, guys. Kindle for $99, but again, you want something that you can keep as a treasure, because of the information where, again, if you had to bug out, you don't have electricity and power. But the hard copy is $22.95, it says on Prime, and there's so much information in here, it's worth 100 times that. Anyway, just wanted to show where you can get it if you want it, and I highly suggest you get it. I asked my wife to get me one for my birthday. It's coming up in November, and I think she has, because she knows my paperback. The back is broken in about 3 places, and it's about to fall apart. But again, just wanted to point that out, because usually when I do something about some of the books or the older books of the Bible, everybody wants to know where to get it. Now, going back to the website, again, this book called The Forgotten Books of Eden is edited by Rutherford H. Platt Jr. in 1926. That's the same copy as my old paperback. But I want to go here and I want to read some of this, guys, because let me say this. There's a couple of reasons I'm doing the video again. One is because you guys asked for it, and it's a wonderful message to me. But the other one is that we are in some pretty tough times. And guys, we are at the point in time, just in my opinion, that things are about to happen. And if you don't believe tribulation is going to come upon this planet, then you haven't read the Bible, and I know that most of you know that. Troubles are coming, and I don't think it matters either way what we see in the political world arena. It's going to happen. It's coming. And so, as a friend of mine says, pray and stay out of the way. Shout out, Roy. That stay out of the way is, there's going to be a wave of chaos, a tsunami of chaos and trouble, that if you can avoid it, because that's going to happen. But I could report on news, politics until I'm blue in the face, or complain about it. So can anybody else. But right now we're at the point where it's not going to help. What will help is the understanding of what's happening biblically. And we're talking about events that have been prophesied and then end up coming to pass in the book of Revelation. But as you've heard it said many times, if you don't understand the beginning, You're not going to have a clue of the end, because we're talking about Satan in both places. So you got to understand the beginning, how it started, and what Adam and Eve went through. Now, as this book starts, they've already been through Genesis 3 with the temptation and the beguiling or the seducing of Eve. We talked about it in the video last night. And now comes the point to where they're being kicked out of the garden. And let's read this. And as I scroll down, before I start, let me just say this, guys. You've got the first book of Adam and Eve, second book of Adam and Eve. That's just 2 books in this in the total book that we're talking about. You got the book of the Secrets of Enoch, the Psalms of Solomon, on down the line, Maccabees, 12 patriarchs, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, the testaments of the tribes, of the leaders of the tribes, all the way down to Benjamin. Very, like I said, it's a very thick book, but it is full of knowledge. And as in the preface of the book, it talked about there's questions that you've had as you read the Bible and were taught the Bible in Sunday school or by your parents or whatever, that you had, that there was really no way to answer them because you had heard the whole story or that portion of the story. And this book does not go against it at all. It just fills in a tremendous amount of gaps. Anyway, it's a loaded book of information. We're going to go through and try to get it in 3 or 4 or 5 videos, both the first book of Adam and Eve and the second. But this first book is amazing. Let's take a look at it. And let me also say this. There's so many things, I think, if you open your eyes and ears and pay attention to this and just listen and let it flow, you're going to start to see things come together, and then go back and read it for yourself. And you don't have to wait on my updates. I think what happened in the several years ago when we did this, I did the same thing. Didn't want the video to go too long, go 2 or 3 chapters. And then everybody went and read ahead, and so you were kind of, as I went through it, then on the next video, you were a step ahead because you'd already had time to digest the information, if you understand what I'm saying, and study for yourself. But it goes on to on the 3rd day, God planted the garden in the east of the earth, on the border of the world eastward, beyond which towards the sun rising one finds nothing but water that encompasses the whole world and reaches unto the borders of heaven. And to the north of the garden there's a sea of wafer, clear and pure to the taste. This is mentioned in Revelation, like unto nothing else, so that through the clearness thereof one may look into the depths of the earth. Now, this gets really interesting because what we're dealing with on the 3rd day, remember what we talked about last night, and Peter talked about it, was that a day with the Lord is 1,000 years to man. So listen as we go through this. It says, and when a man washes himself in that clear sea, he becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark, washed in the blood of the Lamb. And God created that sea of his own good pleasure, for he knew that what would come of the man he should make. God knew what Satan would do. So he created Satan, so that after he had left the garden on account of his transgression, men should be born in the earth, from among whom righteous ones should die. We've seen it through history, whose souls God would raise at the last day. Listen to this, when they should return to their flesh. What? Think about that. Okay, if you died, when you return, many think you're going to be totally in the spiritual body. But you realize the angels have a body? And it is a spiritual body. It's a different body, but it is a highly brightened flesh at this point, because God created them during the creation of the planet. And each day, day 1 when he did this, and on the 3rd day when he started in the garden, then those were 1,000-year periods. He said they should bathe in that. He did not want that men should bathe in the water of that sea and all of them repent of their sins. Why? Because Adam and Eve are being cast out because they went against the word of God. And it's not easy to just walk in and wash the sins clean. You're going to go through some things in this lifetime. Every generation has. And you're going to see it coming now. But if you know the end of the game, you can really keep a positive attitude. And that helps you keep a clear head. It said, but when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward, lest he should draw near to the sea of water, and he and Eve washed themselves in it, be cleansed from their sins, forget their transgression. That's the key. Now, this sea is still there. It's part of the living word. Okay? But there was not going to be an easy way after what had happened in the garden for Adam and them to walk out of the gate and be cleansed at that point. They had to go through what we're going through now. It says, again, as to the southern side of the garden, God was not pleased to let Adam dwell there, because when the wind blew from the north, it would bring him on that southern side the delicious smell of the trees of the garden. Wherefore God did not put Adam there, lest he should smell the sweet smell of those trees, forget his transgression, and find consolation for what he had done. Take delight in the smell of the trees, and not be cleansed from his transgression, just to be thinking his life is just fine. He doesn't need to be cleansed. That's not what God wanted. Again also, because God is merciful and of great pity, and governs all things in a way he alone knows, he made our father Adam dwell in the western border of the garden, because on that side the earth is very broad. He's talking about the physical earth as we know it. That's why in this body that we have, the garden will never be discovered. It's a different dimension of the flesh, and God commanded him to dwell in a cave in the rock called the Cave of Treasures below the garden. Now, guys, why is it saying below the garden? Because it is a lower dimension. You're going to find there's a lot of chapters in both part 1 and part 2, guys, but they're not that long. We just finished chapter 1. It says, but when our father Adam and Eve went out of the garden, they trod the ground on their feet, not knowing they were treading. Why? Because no longer were they in that enlightened body. And when they came to the opening of the gate of the garden and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with stones, large and small, and with sand, they feared and trembled and fell on their faces from the fear that came upon them, as they were as dead. They had never seen anything but paradise. Because whereas they had hitherto been in the garden land, beautifully planted with all manners of trees, they now saw themselves in a strange land which they knew not and had never seen. Talk about strangers in a strange land. And because at that time they were filled with the grace of a bright nature, guys, they had not descended from their spiritual flesh body. Again, not the finished project of the body after the 1,000 years and the books are read and opened. He said, but because at that time they were filled with the grace of a bright nature, and they had not hearts turned toward earthly things. They had no idea, guys, what a desert was and what was happening. They were seeing their footprints. Therefore had God pity on them, and when he saw them fallen before the gate of the garden, he sent his word. What? He sent his word unto Father Adam and Eve, and raised them from their fallen state. Why did Christ say, I am the Alpha and the Omega? Because he was here in the beginning, and he will be here in infinity. He sent his word unto Adam and Eve, and raised them from their fallen state. Again, short chapter. Let's read chapter 3. And guys, even though Peter knew about the one day with the Lord as 1,000 years with men, he was the only one that really talked about it that much in the Old and New Testament. God said to Adam, I have ordained on this earth days and years, and thou and thy seed shall dwell and walk in it until the days and years are fulfilled, when I shall send the word that created thee, and against which thou hast transgressed, transgressed the word has made thee come out of the garden, and that raised thee when thou was fallen. So this time, he's not saying days and days, he's saying days and years. But listen to this exchange, because God talked to Adam and Eve. Yea, the word that will again save thee when the 5 days and a half are fulfilled. And that is the first coming of Christ. But when Adam heard these words from God and of the great 5 days and a half, he did not understand the meaning of them. Peter did. For Adam was thinking that it would be 5 days and a half to the end of the world. And Adam wept, and he prayed God to explain it to him. And God, in his mercy for Adam, who was made after his own image and similitude, explained to him that these were 5,500 years, and how one would then come and save him and his seed. That's Christ. So think about this. From this time that we're talking about, 5,500 years, that would be the return of Christ, not where we're at now. So you could go back 5,500 years and looking at not the 5.5 days, but exactly what God is saying here, and you understand that day with the Lord is 1,000 years to man. And so by the time the garden was made on the 3rd day, we were already into 3,000 years. You understand what I'm saying? That it happened just like that. So you can go in there and figure the math any way you want to get 13, 14,000 years, and look back in time and see the troubles that had come upon this planet. And remember, the first day, the earth was without form and void. It had become without form and void because of the first flood, not Noah's flood, because Noah's flood came after Adam and Eve. But there was destruction. So you can do your math. But again, this backs what Peter is saying. 5,500 years, and that would be at 1 BC, guys, right in that area, okay? Or 1 AD, any way you want to put it. Then you can look at, you can do the math on parts of from Daniel to Revelation. But God had before that made this covenant with our father Adam in the same terms. They had talked about it. Ere he come out of the garden when he was by the tree whereof Eve took the fruit and gave it to him. He already knew the consequences. Inasmuch when our father Adam came out of the garden, he passed by that tree. Now listen, what had happened. Check this out. And he saw how God had then changed the appearance of it into another form, and how it had withered. It had become the cursed serpent. And again, when Adam was by the gate of the garden and saw the cherub with a sword of flashing fire in his hand, and the cherub grew angry and frowned at him, both Adam and Eve became afraid, imagine, of him, and thought he meant to put them to death. So they fell on their faces and trembled with fear. But he had pity on them. Now this was a cherub, and showed them mercy, and turning from them went up to heaven and prayed unto the Lord, and said, Lord, thou didst send me to watch at the gate of the garden with a sword of fire. But when thy servants Adam and Eve saw me, they fell on their faces as were as dead. O my Lord, what shall we do to thy servants? Then God had pity on them and showed them mercy, and sent his angel to keep the garden. And the word of the Lord, this is not the cherub, the word of the Lord came unto Adam and Eve and raised them up. And the Lord said to Adam, I told thee at the end of 5 days and a half I will send my word and save thee. He was fussing at him. Strengthen thy heart, therefore, and abide in the cave of treasures of which I have before spoken to thee, the level below the garden. And when Adam heard this word from God, he was comforted with that which God had told him, for he had told him how he would save him. Guys, that's the whole gospel. And that's why, instead of talking about politics now, people are saying, well, what do we do? What do we do? This is what you do. You learn to strengthen yourself in knowledge and forget about what's going to happen. You prepare for yourself and your family. Stay out of the way and study. While we're here, let's do chapter 4, guys. They're not that long, but they're so full of knowledge. But Adam and Eve wept for having come out of the garden, their first abode. Guys, I would be weeping too. They had it made, and, they knew it. And indeed, when Adam looked at his flesh that was altered, what did he say? Again, here, when they're talking about flesh, and that's what I said in chapter 1, that coming back to the flesh after you were raised up. And indeed, when Adam looked at his flesh, it was altered, and he wept bitterly. So when you guys are come back, when we come back up for that 1,000 years of teaching, we're going to be in the flesh that Adam was, not in this altered flesh that has turned on him as he was cast out of that dimension into a physical shell that is always full of cracks. As they walked and went gently into the cave of treasures, even though they were weeping, they were obeying God. And as they came into it, Adam wept over himself and said to Eve, "Look at this cave that is to be our prison in this world and a place of punishment." What is it compared with the garden? What is its narrowness compared with the space of the other? What is this rock by the side of these groves? What is the gloom of this cavern compared with the light of the garden? Of course, it was nothing compared to that. Nothing compared to paradise. And that's what they were talking about. Paradise. Christ mentioned that on the cross. As you guys read on through this, you'll realize they were not just confined to the cave, but this was their shelter, and it was dark. What is this overhanging ledge of rock to shelter us compared with the mercy of the Lord that overshadowed us? Guys, it's hitting them in the face. So you just reverse this because they are getting to the state that man is in now. But we're about to go back after all those thousands of years into the new body. What is the soil of this cave compared with the garden land, this earth strewed with stones and that planted with delicious fruit trees? And Adam said to Eve, "Look at thine eyes and at mine, which afore beheld angels in heaven praising, and they too without ceasing." Do you understand? Their spiritual eyes. They could see the angels in heaven from the garden. So guys, again, people say they think they know where the Garden of Eden is. They have no clue. But now we do not see as we did. Our eyes have become of flesh. They cannot see it in like manner as they saw before. Their spiritual eye was closed. Adam said again to Eve, "What is our body today compared to what it was in former days when we dwelt in the garden?" After this, Adam did not like to enter the cave under the overhanging rock, nor would he ever have entered it. But he bowed to God's orders and said to himself, "Unless I enter the cave, I shall again be a transgressor." He was starting to learn. Now, guys, to end the video, I'm going to go up a couple of chapters and read 4 verses here just to encourage you to continue to read and study. But as I start the next video, I'm going to start exactly where I left off. But Adam and Eve continued to moan and groan and really panic and pass out and faint and try to fall off mountains and everything else. But God would always send the word and raise them back up because they had a mission to fulfill, and they had to go through it. There was no easy way out. And just a little further up, I'm going to read this. It says, "Of your own free will have you transgressed through your desire for divinity, greatness, and an exalted state, such as I have?" You may hear the rain coming in, guys. "So that I deprived you of the bright nature in which you then were." That bright nature, guys, in that other body that you're going to return to during the 1,000-year millennium. That bright nature when Satan's locked up. Said again, let me repeat that. "So that I deprived you of the bright nature in which you then were, and I made you come out of the garden to this land rough and full of trouble." And isn't that true? Amen, God. "If only you had not transgressed my commandment and had kept my law, and had not eaten of the fruit of the tree near which I told you not to come." And there were fruit trees in the garden better than that. But the wicked Satan, who continued not in his first estate, neither did the fallen angels, nor kept his faith, in whom was no good intent towards me, and who, though I had created him, yet set me at naught, and sought the Godhead, so that I hurled him down from heaven. He it is who made the tree appear pleasant in your eyes until you ate of it by hearkening to him. Totally seduced, beguiled. Thus have you transgressed my commandment, and therefore I have brought upon you all these sorrows. And everyone, I suggest reading through it a couple of times. He ends this particular chapter, and he says, "For I am God the Creator, who when I created my creatures did not intend to destroy them. But after they had sorely roused my anger, I punished them with grievous plagues until they repent. But if on the contrary they still continue hardened in their transgression, they shall be under a curse forever." The Kenites did not hearken, and that curse is forever. But guys, again, thank you for taking the time to watch this. I encourage you to come here, read the free software, get your hardbound copy, and just study. I will start up where we left off back in chapter 5, and we'll walk through this particular section again. This was, again, just to encourage you that they knew what was going on, and you got a choice. But it's a heads up, guys. Be safe.